Today is the 12th of April 2024. We are in New Jersey, USA, and we are interviewing Martha Masha Friedman, and my name is Alexandra Sabo. Thank you, Masha, for the interview. Please introduce yourself.
Martha Friedman,
Can you please spell your first name?
Martha.
Can you please spell your middle name?
Masha, Masha.
And can you please spell your last name?
Friedman, Friedman.
What was your name at birth?
Kohn, Kohn.
Did you have any other names, nicknames, or other names?
No,
When were you born?
1927. But there is a little confusion there because in the camp, my sister always told me, just tell them you're 16. I wasn't really 16. I was 14. But I kept saying everywhere that I was 16, and it was accepted.
And so when you were 16 or 13, you were born in 1927?
With the 1927, I would have been born in 1927.
Right. And when is your birthday? What month and day?
July 15.
How old are you today, Masha?
95.
What was the name of the town where you were born?
Watts, VAC.
Near which large city is Vats?
Which city is it near for? Right, Budapest,
And what country is it in?
Hungary.
What was your mother's name?
First name or last name?
Both.
Regin Binetter. You want me to spell it? Rezsin, Regin Binetter, Binetter.
Thank you. And your father's name?
Kohn.
And his first name?
Aladar Kohn.
Can you please spell it?
Kohn. The first name? Aladar.
Thank you. And what was their nationality?
Hungarian.
Can you remember your maternal grandparents' names?
I didn't know my grandparents
How come?
because they were not alive when I was alive.
And did they tell you their names, or you don't remember?
There was no get together with any grandparents because they were no longer living.
On both sides?
My grandmother from my father's side was living also in Watts, and she lived to be just a couple of months before they started to take us into concentration camp. So she was alive until the last stages, but not in a speaking condition. She was no longer speaking at that condition.
How old was she? Do you know?
In 90s, 90 something.
And her husband?
He was no longer alive.
Where was your mother born?
In Bratislava.
When?
Was a small town, very small town in Bratislava. I don't remember the name.
Do you know what type of education, school, or profession your mother had?
Before she got married?
Yes.
Before she got married, she was the daughter of a religious man, and that's about all I know about them. I didn't really get to know them close.
What is your strongest memory of your mother?
Of my mother, the best thing or the worst thing?
Both.
The worst thing is when they took my mother out of our garden or front yard, and I never saw her again. That was the worst thing. The best thing was when we were going to we had a matzo factory, to go there and help and make the matzo, make the shmure matzo. That was our pleasure.
So your mother worked in your family factory next to raising you?
My mother,
Worked there?
that was our factory. What was the question?
Whether she worked in the factory with your father.
Well, she was telling them what to do, what not to do, you know.
And the boss was your father?
My father was, until I was about 6 years old, my father passed away. But that had nothing to do with the Holocaust. He died of natural causes.
Do you remember why, what the natural causes were?
Because of cigarette smoking.
And you mentioned your family had a factory. Can you talk more about that?
We had a matzo factory. We had about 15, 20 people working there. And they had all the equipment and everything. And it was in existence until the Germans took us.
Where was your father born?
In what?
When?
When? Have no idea. It's not that I don't remember, I have no idea.
And did your father have any siblings?
Not to my knowledge.
And your mother?
My mother had several sisters, brothers, living in different parts of the country.
Who do you remember?
Bátorkeszi is the name of the place where my mother was born, called Bátorkeszi. That was a little town. But as far as knowing the sisters or brothers, we knew them, you know, for short visits, but not very close relationship.
Because the family still lived in Bátorkeszi?
Not only in Bátorkeszi, in Pozsony, in different places, and there was just too much distance between them, and they didn't have a chance to see each other that often.
I see. And how did your mother arrive in Vats? How did she go to Vats?
How did my mother?
Go to Vats. How come she went to Vats?
Evidently, she got married there. I don't know. Have no idea.
You don't know the story of your parents meeting?
Not really.
Okay. Do you have any siblings?
I had a brother. He was killed by the Germans. I had a sister. We were together in the camp. And my sister died about 5 years ago. So at this point, no one.
Can you tell us your brother's name?
Lester, Laszlo.
And his last name? His last name?
Who's what?
His last name, Laszlo.
Oh, Kohn, Kohn, Kohn.
And your sister's name?
Anna Cohn. But when she died, she was Greenwood because she married someone whose name was Greenwood.
Tell me a little bit about Vats. What do you remember about Vats?
It was a nice town, overflowing the Danube right by our door. Beautiful place to walk around, beautiful place to visit, but not to be there as a Jew.
Do you remember where you lived in Vats?
Where? Yes. Rivka's egg.
And was this a family house or an apartment?
Family house, 2 houses.
Who lived in the 2 houses?
One my grandmother and one my mother and the children.
What languages did you speak at home?
Hungarian.
Please describe your home in detail, what you remember from the inside.
On the inside, we had a beautiful bedroom where we slept, beautiful living room with Persian carpeting, pictures on the wall. Another room where we had the family stay together, eat dinners or breakfast or whatever. And then a veranda where we sit during the summer days. And beautiful big yard. Is something that we loved.
How would you describe your family's economic status?
We were a well-to-do middle-class family.
Was it typical of the Jewish community in Vats?
Typical?
Yes.
No, because some people there was some Orthodox, and there were some who are less Orthodox. New Orthodox, it was called. But it wasn't typical, no. Some were very religious and some were just, so-so.
And your family?
My family was in the middle. We were not ultra-Orthodox, and we were not Neolog, or whatever it was called. We were just in the middle.
And what part of Vats did you live in? What was the neighborhood like?
It was called Rivka's. That was the street name, Rivka's 1.
And the neighborhood?
One was there called Görögutca.
And was it a residential area?
Residential, yes.
Do you remember the neighbors, the people living there?
No.
Did you celebrate Jewish holidays?
Absolutely.
So what do you remember? Tell me, what was your favorite Jewish holiday?
Every holiday was a favorite. It was when we had to make the Shmira Matzah. The Shmira Matzah, I don't know if you're familiar, that's the one that you cannot make by machine, you have to make it by hand. Everything goes by hand. So only people of the Jewish religion can make that particular matzah. That's the Shmira Matzah that they use for blessings and brochas. Otherwise, you can just do anything, use anything.
And did the entire family cook together, prepare the matzah together?
Yes.
When? Usually when?
Usually they do that, close to Passover. It is very typical of this time of the year.
And what other food do you remember from your childhood?
What color food?
What other food?
What other food? I always liked fruits, all kinds of fruits. And we had in the garden, we had some trees with beautiful flowers, beautiful fruits. I liked all of those.
Did you go to school in Vats?
Yes.
Tell me about your school.
The school was actually a Jewish school where we were able to walk to, and they had a big, big, big yard. And that's where they eventually took us for the ghetto. But other than that, it was like several different rooms, separate different classes, and some of it the rabbi was teaching, some of the classes.
Do you remember the name of the rabbi?
No.
And do you remember any of your friends? Did you have friends in the school?
I remember one girl, her name was Rachel. Another girl was Edith. Another girl was Esther. And another one was Herta. That's about all the friends I had.
And what's your favorite memory with your friends? Can you share a memory with them?
After school, we would either go for a walk because we were very close to the Danube. And it was like a big park there, like a huge park. We would go for a walk, or we would play ball, or we would play some games, or do some homework.
Was this a religious education?
The Jewish education was taught by the rabbi.
And did you have also non-Jewish education?
No, not really.
Did you have any non-Jewish friends you remember? Or people
There were
you
a
knew?
couple of non-Jewish friends, yeah.
And from where?
From the same town, the same area.
And what do you remember about them?
They were very nice. They liked us. There was no reason for them to tell me, get out of here. You know, they never did.
Describe how your birthday was celebrated.
In Europe,
Yes.
it wasn't a big thing like it is here. We would have a cake. The family would get together. We would say happy birthday and eat.
And what would you and your brother and sister do at home or at the weekends?
What did I
Do? Can you share a memory?
with my sister and my brother? We went on the Danube to row the boat, and that was our favorite, or swimming, we like that too. And my brother would teach me how to handle the oar, because he was the oldest. My brother was the oldest.
Did they also go to a Jewish school?
No, my brother went to a Catholic school because there was no higher education in the Jewish section. So he went to a Catholic school, and he was allowed not to write on Saturdays. In other words, the school officials allowed him not to right on Saturdays.
And this school was also in Vats or in Budapest?
But
And your sister?
my sister went by train to Abonyi in Budapest for about, I think, for a year, and after that, Judaism started.
Did you ever experience anti-Semitism in outside of school, in town, or anywhere?
Never. Only when they put us in the train.
Okay, let's start talking about this period. So, when do you remember the first time that danger was coming? Or
Okay. Okay. The very first time some officials came to our house and asking for the head of the household. The head of the household meant they want the man of the house, like my father. We explained to them that my father is not alive anymore, and then, of course, they asked who would be the head of the house. We said, my mother. And with that, they left and came back a couple of days later. And they said that my mother should pack a small little suitcase and she would go with them for a few days and then she will come back. Then they left and came back a third time to pick up my mother with a small little suitcase. And at this point, my sister, she was very smart and she was very strong. I was very timid. I was very afraid of everything. So anyway, my sister took me to the deepest portion of the house, which was a basement. You know how they had basements in Europe. It was like cold in there. And she started digging with a shovel. I said, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm digging and putting the jewelry in there." So she was smart enough to get ready that we are burying the jewelry, and whenever we will find it. And it did happen. We did find the jewelry that she buried. And this is the first time that we really realized that something is not right here. And then they took my mother. They said she'll be back in a few days. That was the last time I saw my mother with the small suitcase. She never came back. She wrote to us many times, several letters. And she was asking our maid, who was with us for a long time before, that whatever my children need, just give it to them, buy it for them. I will give it back to you when I come back. So anyway, my mother didn't even have to go to Germany to be killed. She was killed right there in Hungary. She never came back. She never wrote to us anymore because she couldn't. There was no more mother. That's when the whole thing started. And then a few days later, they came to the house with guns. It was only my sister and myself at that point. And they took us to the ghetto, the so-called ghetto, which was actually the big yard in the synagogue yard. we were taken over there. That's where we were in ghetto. Then we got the Yellow Star. Then we couldn't go on the street by ourselves. Somebody has to come with us. And it was just getting to the point that we knew that something is not right. So after being in the ghetto for a while, they came again, and the whole street, the whole Watts was standing outside watching the Jews getting into the wagons. They were like the wagons that you take the animals. There was no water, no toilet, no drinking or washing water. Whoever couldn't make it, we were there in those wagons for 3 days. No window, no air, nothing. Whoever couldn't make it was just right there and then shot. And that was the most horrifying thing ever. It was just to see people die, to see people not being able to eat or drink or anything at all. It was it was not humanly. It was not humanly, but then again, it wasn't for an animal either. This was the first experience that we had. Like I said, that my mother never came back.
Do you know from where she was sending the letters?
I think it was called Sarasvatak.
And how did you find out about her later?
No, the letters didn't come anymore, and we knew that there is something wrong. And there sure was. There sure was. A lot of things went wrong at that point.
Tell me a little bit more about your maid. You said that she was
The
writing.
maid, she was with us for a long time, for 10 years. And she knew everything. She knew the cooking, she knew the kosher cooking, and she was just a wonderful person. Just a wonderful. She wasn't Jewish, but she was a wonderful person. And she was helpful with everything. She went shopping for us when we were in the ghetto, and whenever they would allow it to bring it in, then she would sneak in little things for us. She was a wonderful, wonderful, she was like part of the family.
Do you remember her name?
Katka was Kato, but we called her Katka.
Do you remember her last name?
Probably eventually would come, but not at this point.
Okay.
Gabriel. Katka Gabriel.
Thank you. And you said your brother it was you and your sister at home when the officers came. Where was
My
your brother?
wasn't there anymore because my brother was taken into a concentration camp, a camp where you had to do labor for nothing. And he wasn't in the house anymore because he was taken earlier.
How? Do you remember?
He was taken. He was just told he has to go into the Munkatabor. He wasn't taken by the trains or anything like that. He was just told that he has to go and you have to do your duty.
Do you remember your mother and sister talking about this?
My mother's,
Your mother and your sister talking about your brother?
no, 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 not really.
What do you remember of the ghetto? You said it was in the synagogue.
The ghetto, it was like different rooms in the synagogue building and area. It was like a big, big, big yard. And we were free to go within the barbed wires. I remember I had one friend, her name was Rachel, and while we were in the ghetto, she was telling me that I know someone who is going to help me. So in other words, one of the guards was talking to this friend of mine. Her name was Rachel. And it was just a little vague. No, my friend was telling me that I know someone who can help me. And with that, she said, that guy over there, he's going to take me. And the next day, they found this girl in a ditch, dead. She believed this guy who was going to help her, and the guy evidently took her into, you come with me and I will save you and everything. Next day, they found her in a ditch. That was her story, her short story. Beautiful young girl, beautiful.
Do you remember her last name?
I think Wiener. But I'm not sure about the last name.
And was she your friend from school as well?
Yeah, she was a friend from school, yeah. And she believed this guy who was telling her that I can save you, I will save you.
And who was this guy? A Hungarian officer?
I didn't know him. He was just one of those people who was taking care of us. I mean, watch us that we shouldn't escape. Horrible. And when they put us in those wagons, the cattle cars, every one of the whole city was standing by the railroad station, watching and clapping that the Jews are going, no more Jews. Horrible.
And was it you and your sister together in the ghetto and in the wagons going together?
We were always together, and thank God for my sister. What she was able to do in the camp was unbelievable. She waited in the dark at night, and she went to steal potato peels, cooked potato peels, and bring it to me, and dried bread, and bring it to me that I shouldn't starve, because we were like this, skin and bones. And when they were taking us away from Hungary for what, the whole city was standing and looking and clapping.
So tell me about this moment of departure. What do you remember about leaving Hungary and the trains?
About the departure, they just said to us to get into the cattle cars. There was no water. I said that before. There is no water, no nothing, nothing. You can either make it or die. There's no other way. And several people, unfortunately, were shot right there and then because they couldn't make it. They couldn't keep on anymore. They couldn't breathe. There was no air. There was no water. I mean, can you imagine just no water, no air, no nothing, nothing. And certain places when we went through, the people outside were with the hose spritzing water on the trains to hope that we would get a little drop of water. These were like people, evidently, who were really sorry for us. But the departure itself was, we were just all in one, all in one, all in one. It's horrible. And then we couldn't go anywhere alone. Someone had to come with us to make sure that we don't escape. Whether we went shopping or whatever, but we cannot go alone anywhere. And in the camp, at first we got to Auschwitz. When we got to Auschwitz, big sign, Arbeit macht das Leben frei. They were just music and singing, and you're going to have a wonderful time. And they took away the little bags that they said you can carry with you. They were saying that we're going to safekeep it for you. You will have it. We will give it back to you. We never saw anything. And most people, the ones who would believe everything, would just take their jewelry with them in those little bags, And my sister, she was just smart, and it was really true. We found all the jewelry that she put into the earth. Some of my nieces may even have some of those on.
Yes, we will show one piece at the end of the interview for the camera. What did you and your sister have in your bags? Do you remember?
I honestly don't remember because my sister packed it for me, and probably she put there some food or something. I'm really not sure. But there was nothing substantial, But we didn't have any more jewelry because we didn't take any jewelry with us. And when we came back, we found all the jewelry, the one that was hidden in the ground. And in the camp, my sister would go in the dark to steal cooked potato peels, dried bread, anything she could find in the garbage to bring it to me to have something to eat. We worked 7 days a week in a plane factory, and they took us to work at night when nobody would see what's going on. And in the morning, they would bring us back to the camp, and then we would have tzeelappel twice a day. Tzeelappel meant count heads. And there was a Hungarian girl, Klein Kato. She was worse than the Germans. She was going around with a korbács. I don't know how to say korbács in Hungarian.
Whip.
Whip, okay. She was going around with a whip, and every person she went by, she would say, "Mach schnell, mach schnell, mach schnell. Do it fast, do it fast." She was worse than the Germans. And my sister did whatever she could to keep us alive. Towards, we had one dress. I don't know if it was ever washed. I never saw it being washed. Maybe the rain washed it, I don't know. And one pair of clogs. And the clogs really like ruined my feet because they were either big or small, one or the other. And other than that, it was just sheer, horrible things are happening all over. And this was only a women's camp. But towards the end, they started to make us march, which was called the Dead March. This was getting towards the end. And we had to start walking for 3 days without food again, without anything again. And we were walking. Whoever couldn't make it was shot immediately. So you can imagine like walking, seeing dead people around you, near you, anywhere. Anyway, they took us to a place. They knew that the Russians were getting close to us. And they said, we have to get to a place where you can go to sleep. So they took us to a place called Black Forest. And that's where they said we should lay down and go to sleep. We did it, of course. And the next thing we knew is we opened our eyes and the Russians were there. That was the end of it was called the Dead March. But really and truly, I think the worst thing in everything was when I never saw my mother again. Unbelievable. And you can imagine, I was a little girl. I was 14 years old. But my sister was very smart, and she always said to me, just tell everybody you're 16. Just don't always say that. And I did. And it worked, because the ones under 16, they were considered children, and they would, God knows, they would never come back. I had once an infected finger in camp, and everybody said, go to see the doctor. And I said, no, I am not going. I'm not going to come back. So I didn't go. Eventually, it did heal, but it is impossible to tell all the horrible things. It's impossible. All the little details, 7 days of work every day, 7 days a week to work. And it took a toll on you. We came home. The reason we wanted to come back to Hungary was because we thought if somebody would come back from the family, they would come back home to our house. Nobody came. But it could have been, only my brother. My sister and I were together. And anyone else, as far as friends and whatever, we didn't even know who came back. That was not clear who was able to come back. If you have any questions, just ask me.
I do. So, let's go back to Auschwitz. You say you arrived to Auschwitz first. What do you remember after stepping out of the wagon?
About my brother?
No, about your experience when you arrived to Auschwitz.
When we arrived to Auschwitz, but there were so many things that people have gotten beaten. I was never beaten. The only reason, I think, because I kept everyone away from everybody. And my sister was the one she was very dare. She was daring. She would do anything. And at the beginning in Auschwitz, we really didn't do anything other than lie on the floor, and somebody's shoe was my pillow from the other side. So I was laying here is someone, and I was laying on the shoe with my head. There was music, there was when we took us, when we went, when they took us to a shower. We never knew that we were going in a shower. We never knew whether it's a gas chamber or a shower. When the water came on our head in the shower, then we said, oh my God, we're alive. Other than that, as far as the reception from Auschwitz was loud, music, happiness, and Arbeit macht das Leben frei, that work makes you free.
And the people around you, you said you slept on someone's shoe. Were they also Hungarian Jews?
I have no idea.
You didn't talk to anybody? Only your sister?
I was happy to talk to my sister and always told her to be very careful because she could go out in the dark. They can shoot her in a second. It wouldn't take them too long. And she always went whenever we had an aunt who we met in the camp, and she was very good in German. She spoke very good German. And she got a job from the Germans to cook for the soldiers. So good food, regular food. And she would always tell my sister when she should go and look for the scrap. Which night do they throw out from the kitchen the garbage? So then she was able to get sometimes a little carrots, maybe a little potato, maybe a dry bread, and she would come and bring it to me.
What was her name?
Anna.
Your aunt's name?
My aunt's name? Binetter. Binetter Ethel. Yeah. And the Hungarian girl who was always with a whip, her name was Klein Kato.
Was she Jewish, Kato?
Yes. Yes, she was.
How old was she?
Young, in maybe the very low 30s.
Did she speak or give orders in Hungarian too, or only German?
She usually did it in German, but the only thing she would keep on screaming is "Mach schnell, mach schnell, make it fast, make it fast."
But you and your sister she never hit you or shouted at you?
I was never hit or anything. My sister was, yeah. Couple of times they caught her when she was stealing these cooked garbage. And yeah, she was beaten. Luckily, not shot, but she was beaten. And we were both like this when we came back. Really, really, I mean, we are starved. And then some people moved into our house that was in Watts. And they were, we didn't know those people. They were Hungarian people. And they got a house. Here is a free house, take it. And when we get into that house, there was this family. And my sister, she should rest in peace, she said to this woman, "We are here and you are going to clean the lice from our hair." And the woman looked at her and she said, "Why me?" She said, "Because you are the one I see for the first time." And she had to clean because my sister would not leave her until she cleaned the lice in our hair. There were actual lice in our hair. I mean, you can imagine not bathing, not showering, no washing, nothing.
How much time did you more or less spend in the camp?
A year. A year. Yeah. And then the Russians liberated us, and the Russian liberation, that wasn't such an easy thing, because all they needed was watches and women. That was the Russian mentality.
Before we talk more about the Russians, can you tell me more about your surroundings in the camp? What do you remember of the place?
Barbed wire. That's the only thing, because if anyone would get to the barbed wire, may be able to get by and go out. But there couldn't. There couldn't be such a thing, because the first thing would be that you would die. That would be, it was a big place, you know, a big place, and with the sail rappel every day, twice. That was a horrible thing. You had to stand in line. You cannot give each other body heat, meaning body heat, that you cannot stand close to each other, so you would be cold or hot or whatever. But you can't do that, because right away they would hit you. If you would give body heat to anybody near you, there would be with the cord watch.
And you said in the evenings you went to work. Tell me more about that.
Because they took us evening, not to have people be suspicious who are all these people going to. And so they took us at night to work and took us early in the morning back to the camp from work. So people would not be asking questions, who are all these people or whatever.
And what did you work?
In an airplane factory. Whatever they were giving us, pieces, a couple of things, we know it, that my sister did not do the right thing on purpose. And that plane went down. This much we knew. And we also heard from some people who came back that my brother was alive and he was looking good. They saw him in a camp, and the Germans saw that the Americans were getting close to them, and they would put the camp on fire where my brother was. He was doing fine. He was looking okay, they said, but they couldn't make it because they put the whole camp on fire because they knew the Americans were right there nearby. Horrible thing, horrible thing.
Do you remember who told you this? Who saw
Someone
your
who
brother?
came back, I haven't been in touch with that person in a long time, but it just so happens that they went by that camp. He was still a prisoner, and I don't know who he was. I don't know. He just said that I saw your brother.
And he told you this in Vats?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's go back to your working place. Do you remember the boss or the Nazi guards there? Who was there? Who do you remember from the workplace? From the factory?
From the factory? No, those were all people working for Germany. They were not. They didn't belong to the SS. They didn't belong because there was one foreman. I have no idea what was his name. That he came one time with one apple, and he said to me, "Go in back of the machine and eat the apple, then come back." This happened once with one apple, and that was a German, not an SS.
You mentioned that you saw horrible things. Can you share one memory that was a very painful or a negative memory from Auschwitz about others?
Well, not specifically from Auschwitz, because in Auschwitz we did not work too much. Like I said, we were sleeping on the floor and putting our head on a shoe. The most hurtful thing to me was seeing my mother walk out with a little suitcase and never come back. I mean, that is just impossible to explain what kind of feeling I could have. I mean, I was a young girl, but still in all, I understood that my mother is not coming back. I have no mother. And I really think, except the other things, that we could feel the smell constantly. We could feel the smell from the gas chambers. We could, even when we went into the shower, like I said, we didn't know whether it was a shower or not. We didn't know until the water kept coming. Could have been just a gas chamber. There was one man who came back from Auschwitz, and he was telling a story. I didn't really know him, but I heard about it. He was telling a story that he had to close the door on his own father at the gas chamber. Can you believe that? Can you imagine that? It's a true story.
Also a man from Vats?
Yeah, yeah. But I didn't know who he was or whatever, but there were a lot of stories that were horrible.
So when you went back to Vats with your sister, you met the other people who came back. Where did you meet? Where did you talk?
No, I didn't really meet people who came back. I saw this one person who used to come to our house before we went to Auschwitz. And that was the one who told us that my brother was the camp was put on fire. That's how we knew about that. But other than that, I don't even know if he lived in Watts. I'm not sure.
And was Kotka there?
Katka was there until they let her come into the ghetto. But then they told her, you can go to the window and talk to them, but you cannot go in. And then Katka didn't, she was afraid to go back. She was afraid for her life.
So the last time you saw Katka was in the ghetto. You inside and she out.
She was outside and she was trying to always bring some little things, that we might need or want. But that's the last time we saw her. And she was really like a family member.
Let's take a break. Here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Masha, can you tell me more about the Death March?
Yes. That was getting close to the end because we didn't know, but we were put in line and they just said, just walk and follow the first one. And nobody knew how long it would be. At the end, I found out that it's supposed to be 3 days. If the 3 days someone could make it, you stayed alive. If the 3 days you couldn't make it, they would shot you right there. And probably that was the main reason it was called the Death March. There is no way to go in or out. It was either you're dead or not dead. But everyone knew that. Everyone walking in that bunch knew that if we cannot walk, at one point my sister gave up and she said, I'm not going anymore, you go and I'll stay. And I don't know how I got the strength. I started shoving and pushing and do anything I could. I don't know how I did it. Honestly, I didn't because I was like this. And I pushed and shoved and pushed and shoved, and I said, we make it, we're gonna make it. But I tell you something, in my childish mind, I didn't really realize what goes on, My sister understood it more because she was 8, 10 years older than me. And she just kept telling me, just say you're 16, no matter what, just say you're 16. Because the children who did sign up to be under 16 or 14 or 13, whatever, none of them came back. None of them. So the Death March was really like the last resort. And like I said, I don't know how we made it. I don't know how.
Do you remember how long it took?
3 days. That again, without food, without water, without anything. if it happened that it rained, maybe that was a little help.
And did it rain during the 3 days?
Truthfully, I don't remember. I'm very honest with you. I don't remember if it rained or not. I don't know. I don't know which was worse, to be in the cattle car without water, without food, without anything, or doing the death march for 3 days. I don't, at this point, I couldn't say which one was worse. I don't know.
And do you remember where it started? Where were you?
Where we were in the camp in Berlin-Reinickendorf. Actually, Alison has a name of that camp because I kept saying Berlin-Reinickendorf. That's where we were. But she found out that it had another name, the factory's name, I think.
And so tell me about the end of the death march. How did it end?
The ending was unbelievable. They told us to go to sleep that was actually when we were nearing maybe like 2.5 days. And they said, we get to a forest, you can go to sleep, take a rest, and then we go on continue. But that never happened, because by then they knew that the Americans were very close. And they sent us in the forest. It was called Black Forest. And we were free, just like that. But we were freed by the Russians.
Okay, before we talk about the Russians, so you say the death march started in or around Berlin. How did you get from Auschwitz to Berlin? Do you remember?
Auschwitz to Berlin.
Or around Berlin? Yeah, the factory.
Oh, they took us. We went by whatever cattle car or whichever, because we were in Auschwitz for about a month. And then they took us to the factory where we worked, Berlin-Reinickendorf. But that was their transportation, the Germans, they took us.
And here you also slept in a camp, or you were in a camp, and then they took you to work in the factory?
No. When they took us to work, it was nighttime. Then we didn't sleep. We worked in the machines. Then, when we finished the day's work, which was early in the morning, then they took us back to the camp. Then we had to do Zählerpell. Zählerpell meant to count heads. Then with the Zählerpell, it went another 2-3 hours. So coming from work, working the 8-hour shift or whatever we had, and then the one couple of hours do the Zählerpell, that was all time consuming, and we were like falling apart. There was no strength in us anymore. Because at night we didn't really sleep. At night we worked.
Did they give you food in the factory?
No. Whatever food we had was from the camp, and that was something what you would throw out in the garbage today. It was horrible. It was horrible. A little soup, just liquid. And a little dry bread, maybe. The bread, when you get that, was a lucky thing.
So let's go back then to the Soviets. They arrived when you were in a forest, the Black Forest. What do you remember from the Soviet soldiers?
What I remember from the Soviet soldiers is that I was walking on the side of the road at one time, and I saw that Soviet soldiers were trying to keep up with me. I started running, and I ran into a little house where my aunt was with my niece, the one who was working for the German soldiers. And the only thing from the forest, from the Black Forest, the only thing I remember is that they said, "Go to sleep in the forest." We fell asleep and we opened our eyes and we were free. That's how the whole thing was. And the Russians, the Germans ran away. They never caught those people. When they left us in the forest, they just left us and they ran away.
So, what did your sister say when you realized you're free?
My sister was, when she got a little strength back, when she did, she was a little bit more hopeful. And not too long after liberation, my sister got married. That wasn't too long after liberation. And I don't know how, the only thing I could never figure out, I don't know how we got back to Hungary from liberation. I can't remember how we got back. I know we got back to the house where we used to live, and I know that someone else was living there, but I don't remember how we got back.
It's okay. And you said that the strangers living in your house took the lice out of you and your sister's hair. So did you go back to the house? Were you sleeping there? Did you stay in your old house?
No, no.
So what happened?
It was just too many things moved out of there already, and they put a lock on the matzo factory. Then the second time when they came back for my mother, they came with a big padlock and put it on the matzo factory. So from that point on, we couldn't, no more matzo factory. And we didn't go back, no, because my sister got married and she moved away to Debrecen, because that's where my brother-in-law lived, and he had a place there. And then soon after my niece, my sister got married, soon after that she became pregnant. Because during the concentration camp, nobody would have their period because they put something in the food. So they cleared it, they cleared the way. They knew everything and they knew everybody. It was unbelievable.
Was your sister happy when she got her period back?
She had 4 daughters. Yeah, she was very happy. She was a wonderful mother, wonderful mother. And as you can see, my nieces, they all came because of this today. One just came back from her daughter who had a car accident. Someone hit her with a car. And she came, the one who just came now, Julie. I am blessed with my nieces. I really am. And for a while, I lived with my sister before I got married. I lived with my sister for a couple of years.
So where were you while your sister moved to Debrecen?
Why?
Where were you?
Where was I? Eventually, after I crossed the border from Watts to Austria, I went to sleep. I would stay with my sister, and I stayed with them until I got married. Which was actually I got married in this country.
So when did you come to the US?
What did I what?
When did you come here?
To this country I came in 1950.
And what happened between 1945 and 1950?
1945 and 1950. Well, 1945 was the liberation. I stayed for a while with another family who wanted to adopt me. I didn't want to be adopted. And after that, I went to live with my sister until I got married.
Who was this other family?
They were in, I think they were in Alsjögöd or Färsjögöd, one or the other. And I never even knew them, but I think they heard my story that I was just liberated and come back from concentration camp, and they were ready to adopt me. I don't know who they were. I have no idea. And I stayed with them a couple of years, actually, but I didn't want to be adopted. So then I went to live with my sister. But then my sister, uh, she had a chance to come into America because my brother-in-law had a passport. I did not. So my sister and my brother-in-law came out of Hungary and were able to come into America. Then I was in Austria for another couple of years, and what did I do? No, then I went into Canada. I went into Canada as a domestic helper. And that was about, finally, eventually from Canada, I was able to come over to America. But that all took time and effort and money, which we didn't have at that time. But we were able to, pay someone who took us through the border from Watts to Austria. And finally, the guy who took us, he got something like an awful lot of money, who was leading us, because there we also had we had a chance that somebody can shoot us. That's the Hungarians would have been.
So you spent years in Austria as well?
Then I got back, where I got from Watts to Austria, yeah. I was in Austria for a couple of years, and I was ready to go to Israel, and my sister and brother-in-law sent me a wire saying, "Don't go to Israel because you never get to America." So I didn't go to Israel, and I eventually was able to come to America as a farmer. And at the border, when I wanted to come through, the guy asked me, "So how long does it take for an egg to be a chicken?" And I gave a stupid answer, such a stupid answer. And he said, "Do you want to go to America or not?" And I said, "I certainly do." And I think it was just sheer luck.
So, what happened after you arrived to America?
To America, after I arrived, I went to my sister. They had a chicken farm. And I stayed with my sister until I got married, which was in 1953. And one of my nieces, who is here, the oldest one, she was a little tiny thing when I came to live with them. And she would always sit on the billy and tell her stories about where I went, what I did, who did I go with. She's here. That's my oldest niece.
How did you meet your husband?
My husband I met at a wedding, and then I didn't see him for a whole year. Then a year later, we went to another wedding. I met him at the second wedding. And at that point on, he asked me if he could come and visit me because I lived in Philadelphia. And I said yes. And then he came on visiting every weekend. And we got married in 1953. Unfortunately, I lost him a long time ago. Very long time ago.
When?
Why?
When and why?
When? My husband I lost 20 years ago. And why? I think it has to do with cigarette smoking also. I think so.
What was his name?
Alex. Shani.
And his last name was Friedman?
Friedman, yeah.
Can you spell his nickname for people who don't know?
His first name?
Shani.
Shani would be, the real name would be Sandor. Sandor.
Thank you. Tell me about your marriage with Shani.
He was a wonderful husband. Very, very caring, wonderful, wonderful father. There is not one bad thing I could say about him. Not one thing, really.
So he was also Hungarian.
He was actually originally the place where he comes from. He came from Beregszás. At one point that was Hungarian, one point it was Czechoslovakian. So he spoke Hungarian, and he didn't even speak Czechoslovakian. Mostly it was Hungarian. But he was just good father, good husband, good person.
Was he a survivor?
My sister?
No, your husband. Was he a survivor?
Yes. Yeah. My sister's husband even had a number on her arm, on his arm. We didn't get a number on our arm because the Germans didn't want any more people. They said, we don't have the room, we don't have the place. But they sent us anyway. The Hungarians sent us anyway. They didn't care that they don't want any more. That's a horrible situation, horrible situation.
Did Shani have a number on his arm?
No. No, because he was originally in a forced labor camp. And they were sent all over. They were in Russia, here and there, wherever. No, he didn't have a number. No.
And then you said he was a wonderful father, so you had children together?
With my husband and one son. That was the biggest mistake of my life, to have only one son.
Why?
He couldn't make it today. He takes care of everything for me now. And I would be really lost without him. And he's just a good person. Very good person.
What's his name?
Alex. Oh my God, I'm giving you my... Yeah, we used to call him Alex in English name. Yeah. He was just a good husband. He was a good father.
And your son is also Alex? What's your son's name? Stephen.
Yeah. He was going to try to make it today, but it's just...
It's okay. We have your nieces here, and we will call them to the camera soon. I just have two more questions for you. The first one is, do you have anything you want to share but didn't talk about yet?
Anything to share with what?
With us. Anything that you wanted to tell us but I didn't ask you.
The only thing I would tell you is that I know is like I made myself older when my sister kept telling me, tell them 16, 16. And I did tell that all over, and on a lot of papers it says that I am older 3 years than I really am. And I said, I don't care, I just want to go to America. You were born here, or he was born here?
No, in Hungary.
In Hungary, yeah.
Okay, Masha, my last question is why you decided to give the Shoah Foundation your testimony.
Why did I decide that?
Yes.
For no other reason that anti-Semitism is highest ever now than it ever was before. And if we don't do something about it, then we have to go live through what we lived through already, which was a miracle. And everybody has to at least try to do something about it. I don't know much about the Shoah Foundation. I know some people did it, but I don't know much about it. I know that Spielberg originated it, and like I said, I don't know enough about it.
It's okay, but what is your message to the future generations?
To the future generation is just do what you can to step on anti-Semitism. Just crush it and Try to live your life as best as you can and try to help other people as best as you can. Not much we can do, but there is something everybody can do.
Thank you, Masha. Thank you for the interview.
You're welcome. Now, what you want to ask my nieces, I shouldn't listen?
Masha, please introduce your family.
Okay. This is Alison. You need second name?
Yes.
Alison Berg. She is my great niece. Are you my great niece?
I sure am. Proud of it.
That's Marion, my friend and niece, Marion Schaffman. Thank you for being here, Marion. Who is next one? Barbara.
Yeah.
Barbara Berg. Her lucky mother. She's my niece. And thank you so much for bringing all the food and being here, Barbara.
Now that's documented too.
Who else is here?
Judy,
Judy, where is she?
right here.
Hi, Judy.
Hi.
My niece, who just came in from her daughter's bedside because she had an accident, and driving from, what is it, an hour and a half to get here?
About, yeah.
Yeah. I'm blessed with my nieces.
So I'm going to start asking questions to the nieces, just one or two, and then Allison will have a bit more questions. I'll have a bit more questions to you. So, can you please also tell the watchers who exactly you are to Masha? So how you're related, nieces, how?
Okay, our mother was her sister that she went through the Holocaust with, and she lived till 3 months shy of 100. She never wanted to do the show up presentation production. It was too hard for her to talk about it, but she talked a little bit about it, and to us, and to Allison actually, a lot. And so we're very close with Masha because she's the matriarch of her family right now. And we've always been close since I was the one that was a baby when she came to live with us, maybe a toddler. And I remember practicing to walk down the aisle for her wedding before she got a proposal. And we were flower girls at the wedding. And then she lived very close to us as we were growing up. So we've always been very close.
How much of the wartime experiences did you hear from your mother? And more or less, when did she start telling you the story?
So my mom didn't talk about the Holocaust experiences with us growing up. My father really was more vocal about it. So we learned most of what we learned about it through him until I guess Marion had children first, and she started to go into the schools to talk about her Holocaust experience, and then she did it with my children's schools in 5th grade and in 7th grade. So she became more vocal for her grandchildren, more so than for her children. She left Hungary, I guess, in 1947, 46?
49. I was 9 months old.
Oh, right. Okay. So she left in 1949 and she never looked back, never visited, never wanted to see it again, as opposed to Masha, who has visited several times and has gone back several times over her lifetime. So they had very different takes on their life after the Holocaust.
If I can just add to that, it was our father. I'm one of the 3 nieces who has been close to Martha, related through her sister, our mother. It was our father who started telling us stories, not when we were little, but when I remember being about 16, he wanted us to know. And he would say things to us or to me that this could happen again. And he thought it was important for us to understand that. And he explained that when he came to this country, he changed his name to an anglicized name because he was of the firm belief that the horrors of the Holocaust could be repeated. And he wanted us to know. It was more difficult for my mother to deal with that past. And so she talked about it less until later in her life. I would meet Martha and my mother on Saturday mornings at a bagel shop as a regular thing, right? And Martha would tell us more stories, or we would go to a diner, and the stories of her and my mother and how they survived and what they went through, and stories about our mother's strength against incredible odds to survive, and how Martha helped her and she helped my mother, and it was their close bond that got them through, similar to stories that we heard from our father.
Can you state your father's name? I'm not sure that we mentioned his name before.
Eugene Greenwood.
Thank you.
And his Hungarian name was Jeno.
You know.
And,
Grunbaum.
and the original
Grunbaum.
name was Grunbaum
Yes.
Well, that was actually the German
version.
they made,
version. I think he told us that
they made him change it.
way before his name was Baruch, going back to
It was?
when the family was in Spain.
Wow.
And when they dispersed, and ultimately ended up in Hungary. And our dad shared that his entire family, with 2 young boys, when I was in college already, had been killed during the Holocaust. And after the war, he met my mother, who happened to get off of a train that had been stopped in a village that he returned to after the war. And they met, and within
2 weeks, 10 days.
less than that,
11 days.
they were married.
Thank you. Allison, when was the first time you heard about your grandparents and Masha's story?
I don't know if I can identify a single time it being the first time. I always knew that my grandparents were different than other grandparents. They had heavy accents. They hoarded sweet and low from the diner. And we kept kosher. So I always knew that there was something different and that my grandmother was special. That was always very clear in our house, the way that she commanded respect from everyone. I know that the first time we learned about it in school, I already knew more than everyone else. And we learned it in school in 5th grade. So I was young when I was kind of introduced to this topic of survivorhood in our family.
And did your grandma and Masha tell you the story together?
Sometimes. They both came to my school together in 5th grade to tell their story side by side. There were pieces of the story that came out from my grandmother in no chronological order, but in kind of sporadically in conversations and things like that. And then when my grandmother passed away, it was at her Shiva that Masha really, from beginning to end, told me the full story and filled in a lot of the gaps from the piecemeal that I had had before. But the times that they told me both together were in the school settings.
Can you tell me or tell us why this is important to you and what your outlook is with education of the Holocaust?
I I think that knowledge is your greatest weapon against everything. And so, in the face of anti Semitism and hatred of all kinds, hatred of other people that you might not know or understand, that knowledge and education is your best way to fight that. I think early education and exposure and understanding and empathy and compassion, so that this doesn't become a strange thing, that, you know, Judaism or Jewish people isn't a scary or strange thing if you are introduced to it younger. I think that that is critical in helping create a better world for everyone and a world that is for everyone. And I think that I can't change that my family had to go through this tragic experience. But what I can do is leverage the lessons that I have taken from their story to create a better world, more understanding, more compassion. And again, it's for it's using the experience of the Jewish people, but applying it to all of the people in the world that don't have always the recognition or understanding of other people.
And can you talk a little bit about your involvement with third generation groups?
Yeah, so I have the privilege of serving on the board of an organization called 3GNY. 3G is what grandchildren of Holocaust survivors kind of termed themselves as the third generation descendants. It's because we have a unique experience, a different experience from the children of survivors themselves, for many reasons. And we've created this community. So 3GNY has been around since 2005. And then in 2010, created an education program where we actually train grandchildren of survivors to learn and put their grandparents' story together in a way that is compelling and actually evokes those lessons that we want to take away. And we send those trained speakers into schools around New York and now around the country, and some internationally as well. We have Sydney, Australia, Toronto. We are the last people who are going to hear these stories directly from the people who experienced them and remember the stories. So we are the last living links to this period in history. And we find that going into schools, community groups, workplaces, and having that more personalized experience makes a really big difference in people's understanding and what they come away with from learning about the Holocaust. And I think that a lot of us feel this sometimes obligation, sometimes privilege to be able to carry those legacies into the future and try to make some good of it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Feel free to edit me out.
No way. Can you tell us what we see in that picture? It's this picture.
My mother and father Israel.
Was this before you were born?
This was before I was born.
Okay. Okay, Masha, who do we see in that picture? In this picture?
Laszlo, my brother,
Him?
Anna, my sister, and Masha, myself.
When was this picture taken? Or where? Do you remember?
That had to be taken in Watts. But what year? I could only tell by myself, and I could have been like, how old could I have been there? Maybe 10?
Okay.
No?
Who can we see in that picture?
My father. Judy, now we have to go.
Yeah, so who's on the picture?
Marianne Chapman, my niece, and Judy Yuland, my niece.
And what's the story with this picture?
The story of the picture was that it was my wedding, and the girls were supposed to wait in the back, and Marianne said to Judy, now we have to go. They have to start walking.
Is this your... Who do we see on this picture?
Tell you the truth, and none of those people are alive as far as I can see, except the little ones.
Who are they?
I can make it out from here.
Do you want my mom to do it?
This is my sister, her sister-in-law. This is another cousin.
My grandpa.
They're all cousins.
And when was this picture taken?
At my wedding, 1953.
When was this picture taken?
1953.
What was the occasion?
Pardon me?
What was the occasion of this picture?
Wedding.
No, that was.
This is a different picture. Can you
Is
stop?
that's-
Can you stop? We're gonna retake. Okay. What is this picture showing?
A bar mitzvah.
Whose bar mitzvah is it?
My son's bar mitzvah. Stephen Friedman's bar mitzvah.
Thank you. Can you please repeat who is on the picture?
Do I see what?
Who is on the picture?
My sister Anna and myself.
Thank you. Okay, Allison, could you please describe this necklace?
This is a golden locket that has photos of my great grandmother and great grandfather on either side. This locket belonged to my grandmother's family before the war. And when it was clear that there was danger coming to them, my grandmother dug a hole and buried their most precious jewelry, including this locket. And after the war, they were able to come back and dig it up. And so this is the only remaining photos that we have. Well, that's actually not true. It is one of the only remaining photos of my great grandmother and great grandfather as she was killed during the war.
Okay.
Oh, there's more.
We gotta get him.
My sweetheart.
Get him taking the pictures.
Yeah, he is. Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right, I'll give you your food back.
Starving.
You didn't eat all day.
I'm taking
Should
my
happen to
backpack.
me.
Who's that, Judy?
Yeah, I'm here.
I can't believe it that Judy drove so much.